The one that had adoption was LNTXBot. LNTXBot had a sudden and very unexpected adoption, and I don't know why. People just like tipping the others on the phone chats. I don't like that idea very much, but people really loved it. They're super lightweight channels that do not touch the chain. So the best way to scale Bitcoin. Node 12 is more like a peer-to-peer thing, like you paying your friend, it's more like a peer-to-peer solution, and the LNURL thing is more like a B2C solution. The fact that users can get paid by the services, like in the normal fiat world, you're a user, you're browsing some content on the internet and stuff like that, and you can only send money, you can never get money out. But yeah, we need more developers making more apps and improving the apps that exist and making them better. But I think the experience could be better, much better than Twitter, Facebook, etc.
Fiatjaf is a pseudonymous programmer who has worked on a handful of really impactful projects, both in and adjacent to the Bitcoin and Lightning Network ecosystem. In our discussion, we started with the work that Fiatjaf has done on things like LNURL, LNTXBot, Nostr, Poncho, and other projects. And then we got into a discussion about the peer-to-peer internet movement at large. And we discussed value for value as a concept as well. I've also added Fiatjaf to today's show splits. So if you enjoy this show and if you learn something new, the best way you can show your support is by sending in sats. If you learn a little, send a few sats. If you learn a lot, send a lot of sats. Half go to me, half go to Fiatjaf. And thank you to everyone who has been sending in sats and comments so far. Just a quick shout out before we get into today's episode. This show is sponsored by Voltage. Voltage is the industry standard and next generation provider of Lightning Network infrastructure. Today's show is also sponsored by Zebedee, and Zebedee is your portal into the world of Bitcoin gaming. We'll have more from Voltage and Zebedee later in the show. Welcome to the show, Fiatjaf. We've got a lot to discuss today. You're working on a ton of different projects in and around the Bitcoin space. I want to get into LNURL. I want to get into Nostr. I want to get into peer-to-peer internet and a bunch of the ideas that you've had in the past shared on your website. But before we do any of that, why don't we start with your background? Maybe you can tell listeners a little bit about how you decided that you wanted to start building on Bitcoin.
Oh, I've been a self-taught programmer for about 10 years now, and I've always used it like programmed as a hobby, and I've done a bunch of different small side projects, and then I was always also a libertarian. I don't know if I should use that word, but an anarchist, something like that, and I got disillusioned with politics. And then more or less at the same time, I had found Bitcoin long before, but hadn't given it the proper attention. And then I decided that Bitcoin was the best way to to bypass politics and make the world better. Yeah, I don't know if I should go into the politics stuff, but that's it. And then I started doing it. I realized how I can help this go forward faster. And so I started doing what I could.
Yeah. When did you get acquainted with Lightning, and when did you recognize that was going to be an interesting platform to build on?
Well, I think I had tried to do some things with Bitcoin before, and it was very complicated. I didn't have a good understanding of the protocol, and it was very complicated to imagine how I would be able to treat all the transactions in the chain and scan the chain, look for transactions. I was thinking about this what would my program do to do all these things, and it seemed very complicated. And then as I was getting back to Bitcoin, learning more, I heard someone mentioning Lightning, and then I realized for some reason that would be a better way to do payment stuff. And then I installed LND on testnet, like before the first release, and I tested, and I loved it, especially the invoice stuff, because I always hated the address stuff. I always thought the address was a terrible idea, like terrible UX. You had to make sure you you're typing the correct address, and it was all very weird. And when I typed the invoice, I could decode the invoice and see who it was paying to, and there was no way to there was no way to miss. There was no way to pay the invoice to the wrong invoice. Like that doesn't it just doesn't work. Like you pay the invoice and that's it. Uh, like
Right.
that was the experience that made me more enthusiastic about planning.
That's interesting. Yeah, just the UX improvement of an invoice. I never thought about it that way, but it makes a lot of sense. So you've worked on, I don't want to get anything wrong because I know you have a bunch of projects that you've contributed to and you've helped build. Some of the notable ones are Nostr, LNTXBot, LNURL, Cliche, Poncho, and a bunch of other projects in and around the Bitcoin space. Are there any, I want to understand how you decide what projects are worth working on. Are there any frameworks you use to figure out how you should be spending your time?
No. It's just guesswork and whatever I'm thinking about at each moment. With yeah, it's very weird. In the beginning, I would start a new project every day and would never finish any. So I learned to stick more with a project and get it working first. Try to get it working first. It still doesn't work 100% of the times, but I'm more able to get things working these days than a few years before. But that's the framework.
Interesting. What was the first project in Lightning that you did get working?
Oh, it was one called Piln. 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 It was a service that pinned IPFS like files after you pay the Lightning invoice. And I just took a node computer and we put a hard drive on it and started storing people's stuff on it and receiving Lightning payments. And I used the OpenNode API for that. And but then what was that experience like? That was my final experience with IPFS, and with that, I learned that IPFS wasn't going to work at all because it was such a simple thing, and it had so many problems. But yeah, that was the first.
Why do you think that project in particular? Was there anything about it that made it more likely to succeed, or why was that the first one that got a bit of adoption, and the other ones prior to it didn't?
What do you mean? That you asked what projects had more adoption? I thought you had asked what was my first project with Lightning. That was my first project. It didn't have a lot of adoption. Like I had like 20 people in files on it before I shut it down.
Oh, I see. So the first project you completed.
The one that had adoption was LNTXBot. LNTXBot had a sudden and very unexpected adoption, and I don't know why. People just like tipping the others on chat. Say, I don't like that idea very much, but people really loved it when it was launched.
Interesting. And you had no idea this was going to be a successful endeavor at the time, right?
No. Yeah, I wouldn't call it successful today, but but it certainly has a lot of users, and I think it in the beginning, like it was 2019, and like there weren't very many Lightning projects and wallets, so it was a very strong thing, a very important thing, part of the network at that point. But today it's a very small, relatively small thing.
Do you know anything about the activity happening on LNTXBot, like any of the metrics associated with it today?
Yeah, I keep track of some metrics, but I never look at them. It's not very much compared to other providers that exist today. Yeah.
Fair enough. I would love to get your sense for like the scale of it, though. Like at its peak or at its biggest moment to date, are we talking like hundreds of users? Are we talking thousands of users? Are we talking tens of thousands? What's your
tens of thousands? Yeah, tens of thousands.
Wow. Okay, so tens of thousands using LNTXBot. Yeah. Interesting.
So now fast forward to today. Can you highlight some of the projects that you're spending your time today working on between the ones I mentioned, Nostr and LNURL and things like that?
Yeah, I've been working mostly on the Poncho and Cliche and the Immortal stuff, uh, which are the hosted channels, mostly hosted channels tools. That Poncho is the plugin for C Lightning CLN that allows you to provide hosted channels to clients. The Cliche is a Lightning daemon that supports normal channels and actually doesn't support normal channels yet, and hosted channels that you can connect it to the Poncho daemon. You can also connect it to the other hosted channels plugin that exists for Eclair, and yeah, and making improvements on that side and experimenting with things on that, and also Nostr stuff. Yeah, I have a bunch of small Nostr projects I've been working on. But everything is going around very slowly, going in parallel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to get into Nostr in a minute, but first, maybe can we step back and help listeners understand what are hosted channels? Can you help me give me a high level overview of what they are and how they work?
They're super lightweight channels that do not touch the chain. So the best way to scale Bitcoin. But also they are fully trusted. So so they don't have any Bitcoin on chain backing them. And the client that opens a hosted channel to a host trusts the host to not steal the funds. And so, but they are like a custodial wallet, but they are much better than a custodial wallet because they have privacy, that normal Bitcoin Lightning privacy that you have on normal channels, because your host that is offering a channel to you only sees an onion, like it doesn't see who are you paying, and it also cannot, maybe if you using more than one, or you can use, like you can have in the same wallet on the same Cliche demo, you can have a hosted channel and a normal channel, or two hosted channels, and then you can send payments splitting between them. Like you split a payment in these three channels, and then your host doesn't know the amounts, and that's it. And what else? You also have the accountability. You like the client and the host, they sign the updates to the channel state, so that the host cannot just claim that your balance is smaller than it was, because you have the signature from the host. So it cannot, if you wanna, if the host wants to steal, it can just run away with the money, but it cannot say, "Oh, you're wrong. I know your balance is smaller than you think it is."
Mm.
Yeah, some of these are the improvements. Maybe I'm forgetting about some other improvement. Yeah.
So when we talk about hosted channel, the host in this example, is this any Lightning service provider?
Yeah,
Who
it's
might be?
anyone. Yeah, it's anyone running. Anyone can offer this service, like of being a host.
Mm.
And to do that, you would run the Poncho plugin that is plugs to your C Lightning. So you have you need normal channels to offer your hosted clients the ability to send payments out. So the payments go through you, and they jump into the other channels as a normal Lightning payment would do.
Is there any other incentive for a host to offer hosted channels? I'm trying to understand what other benefits might
Well,
accrue to the host themselves.
I would get fees from the channel. You can get fees from the channel.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, but another incentive is, like, you offer to your friends and family, and you don't see where they're spending their money on. So if you're offering it, which is better than using a fully custodial solution.
Yeah. So there's privacy benefits there too.
Yeah.
Do you expect that over time, everyone will be using hosted channels over custody? Like if we break out the current setup of Lightning wallets or Lightning users today, and we say there's custodial and there's non-custodial, do you think that the hosted channels will eat into the custodial kind of market share and kind of like disrupt that?
Well, I think it's hard to compete with marketing people, but yeah, I think it will eat a little bit, and I hope it will eat a lot, but I expect it to eat a little bit.
And now, if we compare all three, then we have hosted channels, we have custodial, and we have non-custodial. Among those three, then, which do you think will accrue the largest market share among Lightning users over time?
Well, I think it will be the custodial ones, but I hope it would be the hosted channels part. Yeah.
And is that just because of the marketing of custodial, systems, that they're just a convenient way to get started?
Yeah, the hosted channels are very convenient, but yeah, they don't have the marketing and whatever. They don't have companies behind them to pump them up. But I don't know. I'm just guessing. I don't know about these things. Yeah, and the users would not, like, most of the users will not understand the internals of the protocols and etc. to be able to judge. So they would just use the wallet that is prettier.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, I want to understand how urgent or how important it is for people to run non-custodial or hosted channels on Lightning. It, like, is there an issue? Do you see an issue where we have too many people operating custodial wallets or using someone else's custodial wallet on Lightning, and it leads to some like catastrophic issue for Lightning users? Or what's the worst case scenario if we don't adopt hosted channels and non-custodial setups?
Well, I don't think there will be catastrophes. Like, the catastrophe, like, you're thinking it would be like a bug in the software that everybody's running the same software, and then everybody loses their funds or something like that. I think that can happen with both the non-custodial and the hosted, but there are also many risks with normal custodial providers. I think the thing that worries me more is the government stuff, like KYC stuff that is pushed into all the custodial companies. If there was no KYC, I think custodial could be much better, and I wouldn't dislike custodial stuff as much as I do today. But yeah, I think more people running more custodial providers, even if it's like an LNBit server or hosted channels provider, I think that's good to spread around the like decentralize the custodians and make it harder for the government to tackle them.
Right. I think that this is just my impression from using some of the Lightning apps in the space. It feels like a lot of them either have no KYC or very minimal KYC with like just an email or something like that. And maybe this is to do with the fact that a lot of transactions on Lightning are in smaller amounts. Do you think that over time, I guess there's two parts to this question. Will Lightning begin to support really large payments that, I guess the threshold in the fiat world is $10,000 is typically the level at which a bank or a government really wants to know what you start to do with your money. Do you think Lightning will get to the point where it's common for making these $10,000 plus transactions? And if so, do you suspect that we'll also have a KYC, it'll be like mandated across the board for a lot of these centralized products to KYC their customers before onboarding them?
Well, I think you're very optimistic. I think from what I understand, I actually don't pay very much attention to these things to keep me sane, but I think it's the bar is much lower, like at around $100. Companies already start to get worried about not KYC users, and they start to get more KYC. I don't know about the regulation. I think the government is not very clear about what they want, and I think that's good in one side. but the companies themselves, like, they start to become very much worried about KYC users and limiting, etc. At around 100, I don't know, $100. And yeah, I don't know. I think the ecosystem needs these companies, but also needs people that are less worried about government, like random people in random countries running servers and providing these services to users and to their families and friends. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The best and worst example is OpenNode. Like the everybody was using OpenNode in the beginning because it was the only API available to run small apps, and then they had no KYC, and then they started asking KYC for everybody. I don't know why they did that, but I don't know. Yeah,
Right.
I'm afraid that
Yeah.
that will happen with everybody. So we just have to keep spreading around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've heard an interesting critique of Lightning recently from a few people. It was that a Lightning node is essentially a money transmitter, at least in the eyes of the government, if we're routing payments through Lightning channels. Do you have any concerns that at the node operator level, governments begin to clamp down, or is there anything they can do to prevent people from running nodes? Like it's quite challenging, obviously, given that we have so many hobbyists in the Bitcoin and Lightning space operating nodes from all over the world. But is that a concern in your eyes, that at the node operator level, it becomes like viewed as money transmitting, and you all of a sudden need like some sort of license or some kind of approval to purchase some of these nodes?
I think the government can do these things, but not based on any breeze rationale or anything that's logic, because it would be weird, like, to say a lightning node is a money transmitter, but Bitcoin is not money. So the logic starts to break down at the first sentence. But the government doesn't need logic. Like, it doesn't just do the worst things without any explanation. And you can't counter the government with arguments. Maybe you can do these arguments to the legislators and people in the government, but in the end, if there's someone with power that can do bad stuff, they will do. But my hope, like, and what I think will happen is that more and more government people will start to own Bitcoin and start to like Bitcoin, and they will start to not not want to regulate Bitcoin out of existence. If the government really wanted, and it was a single agent controlling the entire government, they could kill Bitcoin very easily. But that's not that's not the status quo. Like that. Anyway, that's not what we have, and thankfully, I think it won't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting counter argument, that if the government wants to say a Lightning node is a money transmitter, they have to call Bitcoin money, and they're almost allergic to that term right now. They at all costs try to avoid associating Bitcoin with money today. But anyways, I want to shift the conversation a bit to one of the projects you're working on, or that you designed the spec for, I believe, LNURL. Can you quickly just highlight to listeners what LNURL is and what all the different specs do? Because there's a bunch of them in this LNURL set of specs.
Yeah, there are four specs basically. They were created for different purposes, and I think they shouldn't be clumped in the same thing. But that's what happened, and that's where they are. Like, they all have the same name, and the thing they share in common is like you encode an URL in a batch 32 string, and you turn that into a QR code that wallets can scan. It was created by Anton, whatever, I don't know his name, Anton K something, the creator of Simple Bitcoin Wallet, and mostly by him. Like, there was a lot of back and forth in other people, but the idea was that the first thing was he wanted to ask channels, he wanted his wallet to get a channel from a provider. Like the first LSP that was invented was that Bitrefill Tor service. I don't know if it exists yet still. You would scan a QR code, and then the wallet would know they would have to connect to the node and wait for the node to open a channel to the wallet. You couldn't do that before. There was no way to describe that flow. And then he made it in an open protocol that was called later LNURL channel. That was the idea. Like in the normal flow, you have that offered today in maybe Bitrefill and LNBig, and the zero fee routing guy has a page where you can buy a channel. Like all these, they sell the channels. You pay first, and then you scan the QR code, and then your wallet keeps connected to it, and then they open a channel to the wallet. There are some wallets that support this, and then he wanted to the other purpose, like the other goal, was to withdraw funds from a service. Like in the beginning, like 2012, 2000, what's the name? I don't know the numbers in English. 2018 and 2019, you had these lotteries. The only services that used Lightning on the internet was these small apps that did lottery stuff. That was the Lightning Roulette and some others. And you would pay to play, and then you deposit like 100 sats, and then you run, and if you win, you get like 200 sats. And then how do you get? They would ask you like paste here an invoice, a Lightning invoice, and then you're on your phone, and you playing the game on your desktop, something like that. How do you get your invoice from your phone wallet to the desktop? That was impossible. So he made this LNURL withdrawal protocol that was just the service would show an URL, a QR code. You scan that with the phone, and then the phone gets an URL to which it can send the invoice through HTTP, and then the service just pays the invoice. And then
Got it.
Yeah, there's this one was the most adopted, and everybody takes it for granted. I think it's being used in a lot of places right now, and no one seems to realize how difficult it was before this thing was created. And the other one is,
and so that's an withdraw.
Yeah,
right?
That's the withdrawal. And the other one is the pay one. The pay one was the one that I imagined and talked about it with Anton, which is just the reverse flow, that the service just asks you to pay and you pay. You could do this already with just an invoice, but the LNURL pay, in my mind, it was going to be for you having a static invoice on your mid-space shop, something like that, like a physical shop, and then you wouldn't have to create a new invoice every time, and also you could have a server running somewhere, and then you could have different behavior every time someone scanned that same QR code. Like, and then I had a bunch of use cases and examples, and that's it. Yep.
And then what about LNURL off?
Yeah, the off one.
Is that another?
I forgot about that one. The off one is just logging into websites with a key. That's an old idea that everybody has had, and every time they do it, it's broken. There was BitID, I think they did it with Bitcoin addresses a long time ago, and a bunch of other similar projects unrelated to Bitcoin. But LNURL off is the first one that solves easily like the problem that the phishing attack that can exist, that a website would take the login QR code from another website and show to you, and then you log into that, and then the website steals your credentials and log in to the other website with your name. And then LNURL solves that. But it's not related to Lightning at all. It's just a key. You just use a key, which happens to be a key from your Lightning wallet to log in. And yeah.
Right. So among those four, you said LNURL withdraw is the one that is most adopted to date?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Has that, if we look at the adoption of all four, is there anything that's really surprised you to the upside or to the downside?
Yeah, LNURL withdrawal surprised me. I think in the beginning, like after Anton created this, he implemented it in his own wallet, and then created a protocol and wrote it on GitHub and posted to the mailing list, but no one gave any attention. And then I think I got famous about being the LNURL guy, because a long time after that, I started implementing that on LNTXBot, and then I talked to the LNPay guy and the other guy from Lightning Gifts, and convinced them to implement it, and talked to a bunch of other people to implement it too. So it created a little network effect that grew much more than I expected.
And do you expect then over time all apps in the Lightning space will have some component of LNURL integrated?
Oh no, I think when it fits the use case, I think they should. I don't know. There's all this boat 12 drama, and you keep asking me to predict the future, and I have no idea. I only know what I want to happen.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we can get into the Bolt 12 stuff because I think there is a lot of confusion around this, and this is something that I still have a bit of confusion about. I hear LNURL and I hear Bolt 12 often mentioned in the same discussions. Can you give listeners an understanding of where do these two overlap, what each one does better than the other, and what some of the potential use cases might be where Bolt 12 might be necessary, or where LNURL auth is sufficient? What are the can you break down kind of the similarities and differences between the two?
I think they're mostly compared, and when people think of having a static QR code, this is what they share in common. It's a static QR code you can pay to. So it's often compared to LNURL Pay, but people just say LNURL and forget to say they're talking about LNURL Pay. And I think LNURL Pay was thought with business in mind, like services that, like entities, businesses, shops, stuff like that is providing a service to a user. And Bolt 12 is more like a peer-to-peer thing, like you paying your friend, not a it's more like a peer-to-peer solution, and the LNURL thing is more like a B2C solution, And yeah, I think the confusion comes from that. And people, they think, oh, LNURL can pay, I can have an LNURL that pays to me, but then the Bolt 12 people will say, oh, but you have to run a server and have a domain name, and that's horrible, and no one should do that. But yeah, I agree, it's not very not very convenient for a normal person to have a domain name and run an HTTP server along with a Lightning node. But for businesses, that's normal. Like for anyone that's is a service provider, that's fine, and they already have websites with domain names, etc. So it's easy to add a new LNURL thing on their websites.
I see. Beyond Bolt 12, do you suspect that there will be other new bolts? There are going to be a Bolt 13, a Bolt 14, as we come up with new things that we want to integrate into the Lightning Network protocol?
Well, I think they have a lot of boats already in mind. If you look at the mailing list, there's Bolt 13, but I don't remember what it is. But it's not a UX thing. It's more like an internal protocol, internal thing. On the UX level, I think someone will have to come up with something for authorizing payments, like you authorize someone else or a business or someone else to access your node. Yeah, that people have been talking about this, like access your node and make payments on your behalf under certain conditions. Like, this stuff has been talked about since a long time, but no one has managed to make a protocol out of it. But also, I don't know if any of these things will succeed, because most people will not be running Lightning nodes. Like if you were thinking of Lightning having widespread success and adoption, necessarily very few people will run nodes. So I don't know if that's why I'm not very interested in protocols that require people to run nodes and control keys, etc. maybe they can have non-custodial phone wallets, but the phone wallets are very limited. You can't access them ever. Like they're only online when you're with your phone in your hand clicking on them. Otherwise, they're shut down, and then to access them, you have to use the Google ask Google for permission, and that's something we shouldn't be cultivating in this space, I think.
Interesting. Now, for the example of LNURL and Bolt 12, and specifically or LNURL Pay and Bolt 12, so specifically the static QR code, can you speak to the requirements for getting LNURL Pay to launch versus getting Bolt 12 to launch? Like, what are the requirements of building something into the Lightning protocol? How long does that process take? I assume it is a longer process than just implementing LNURL Pay. How is the kind of timeline, the production timeline on these two ideas? How do you compare those two?
Well, LNURL Pay is just it's not part of the Lightning protocol. It's just a way to a standard for communication between a wallet and a service. And so you can a service, I mean, like a website or a service provider on the internet, and then you can just implement it. It's just a set of HTTP requests, so you can just implement that very easily. Any web developer can implement that without knowing anything about the Lightning protocol. And they just need a node to talk to or an API, a Lightning API to talk to. And if the wallet's already supported, the wallet can just scan the QR code, and the wallet will do the magic that is standardized and talk to the server. So that's very simple, very easy. Bolt 12 is it turns the Lightning network into a general purpose message passing network. So you need, for it to work seamlessly, you need most of the nodes to support the Onion messages protocol. That is allowing your peer to send messages, like encrypted message through you, like, and then you use the channel as a way to prevent spam. So you only accept messages from people that have channels with you, but you take these messages from anyone and you pass them to the other channel, and you don't see the messages. But yeah, that's the fully peer-to-peer thing. And people have been worried about spam. I was worried about spam, and I didn't want. That's one of the things I didn't like about Bolt 12. That incentivizes spam and turns the Lightning network from a payment protocol to another thing. Yeah, but maybe there are solutions to these things. I don't know. there was a recent solution proposed that is simple enough to probably be implemented recently. That's just yeah. What else?
Okay. What's your assessment of the development cadence when it comes to Lightning Network development today? Like how are your expectations being met for how much innovation is happening in Lightning? Do you think we can do a better job of attracting Bitcoin developers to build on Lightning? I want to get your high level assessment for like how quickly the space is innovating. Obviously, having been in the space for a number of years, you may have a better sense than some of the listeners on here of like how quickly has development changed over the last couple of years.
Well, I've been seeing. I don't know actually. I'm not paying very much attention. But if you're asking about the protocol level, I think it's going too fast. I think people should stop working on the protocol stuff and stop inventing new things and just fix the problems that exist. And what I want to see, and I've been seeing this a little more, like with the examples, like I want to see like concrete use cases that touch the real world. But I very much don't like when a new developer shows up and starts working on a Lightning Node Manager or a solution for balancing channels. I understand that I also worked on these things in the past, but it's very cool and fun. And also you have an immediate user base that's interested in the Lightning network and etc. And that they will start using your products right away, and you can make some money on that, or just the satisfaction of people using your stuff. but I wanted to see concrete use cases, like people selling stuff and selling services or building interactive services that were not possible in the Fiat world. There's some steps on that direction, but I think it's still a lot of stuff to be built on that direction. And also like existing businesses adopting Lightning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were some, like, you remember that OpenNode announced that Substack was going to adopt Lightning? I never seen anything about
Yeah.
that later, like after that. But that
Right.
kind of stuff is cool. But then they only adopt Lightning. Like it's just another payment method along with our other payment methods, which is fine. But I still want to see like new experiences that the Lightning Network can provide that other stuff can't.
I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Voltage. Voltage is the industry standard for Lightning Network infrastructure. Creating layer 2 applications and services on top of Bitcoin starts with Voltage, where you can spin up nodes, get access to liquidity, optimize your node, and much more. Voltage is leading the way as the next generation provider of Lightning Network infrastructure, and if you want to get a free trial and start using Voltage today, you can do so at voltage.cloud.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there's definitely been some frustration over the last couple of years of like, exchanges not adopting Lightning, of businesses not accepting Lightning payments right away. I think even when the El Salvador Bitcoin bill went into play, there were a lot of people thinking, we're going to get immediate Lightning adoption everywhere. And I think people are still a little bit frustrated of, we may only be at 10% or 20% or a fraction of the country adopting Lightning payments. Do you think that the road to getting people to adopt Lightning payments is in coming up with those new use cases that are not possible on fiat rails, mostly being like micropayments and things like that, things that require instant payments, things that require very low fees on very small payments? Or do you suspect that we'll see Lightning payments come in on regular things that people buy, like at your grocery store, or buying a pair of shoes or buying gas or something like that, where we do have a fiat solution, but it does cost, there is a fee associated with it, and there is delays in the background. Where do you think Lightning adoption is going to come from mostly? New use cases or the existing use cases that are just going to be improved?
Well, I think it will come through everything, because I think Bitcoin will be the only money in the entire world. But I think the way to put our door put our feet on the door is to make these new use cases that were not possible before, and then through these examples we convince the rest of the things to adopt Lightning to, like, for normal stuff. One of the use cases like that you didn't cite is the fact that users can get paid by the services. Like in the normal fiat world, you're a user, you're browsing some content on the internet and stuff like that, and you can only send money. You can never get money out. With Lightning, you can get money out, and there are a million use cases for that, I think.
I agree. I think that's one of the sections that I'm most bullish on is people getting paid for using services that they already use, and they have no idea that the value being extracted from them is worth something. Like that their data on Facebook is worth something, that their time on Instagram is worth something. And I think there's a big opening for a lot of social products to offer users the ability to earn right away. Like we're seeing some of this in, like Stacker News and Fountain and some of these products that allow people to earn from day one. I think it's going to be a really good bootstrap mechanism to get users excited and go, whoa, I can, my time's actually worth something now. And of course, Lightning is the rails that allows you to effectively monetize your time. So I'm with you on that 100%. I want to talk a little bit about one protocol you're working on that is not a Lightning specific protocol, not a Bitcoin specific protocol. It is called Nostr. And the way you describe Nostr is the simplest open protocol that is able to create a censorship resistant global social network once and for all. For listeners who haven't heard of Nostr, can you give them a bit more of an in-depth explanation of exactly what it is and how it works?
So yeah, it's a very simple protocol for connecting to people. Like it's a transport layer for connecting people and spreading information using public key cryptography and servers that there are like servers that anyone can run, and that's it. It how do I say? It's not a peer-to-peer protocol because one user is not supposed to ever connect directly to the other user. They only do it through servers, and at the same time, it is a decentralized protocol in the sense that anyone can run these servers, and you can use any server. You're not tied to a specific server, although you probably will use some specific servers more than others, but you're not tied to them, and they do not own your identity, like in the Mastodon use case, for example. Yeah.
I see. So rather than me connecting to Facebook's server and then connecting to you, it's me connecting to one of many servers which I can choose from, or I can kind of migrate between if I want to, and then connecting to you. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, what makes this protocol simpler than all the others? That was one of the lines that is in the first line on GitHub, is that this is the simplest open protocol. What features make it so simple?
Well, it's just send a signed message to the server, and the server will send a signed message to the other person, and the other person can ask, "Oh, I want to see the message from." Like Bob can ask the server, "Oh, send me a message from Alice," and Alice can say, "Send me a message from Bob," and here's a message for Bob, and that's it. It's very simple because it just uses web technologies like JSON and WebSockets, and that's it. Nothing else. And all these peer-to-peer protocols, they are super complicated and they do not work very well. Like if you have unless you have a server with a fixed IP, it's very hard to get peer-to-peer working, and it's very hard to discover people because you don't know. Like you want to send a message to someone else that's somewhere, you don't know where that person is. So you have to. There are all sorts of ways of asking other nodes if they know this other person and passing the message around, and everything is very inefficient and everything is very slow, and most of the times it doesn't work. So that's why I think all these peer-to-peer protocols that have been tried before, they always fail to get traction because the experience is very bad. And in this case, it's just the same experience that Twitter provides or Facebook provides, but in a decentralized protocol way.
Now, I initially, when I saw and started reading about Nostr, I thought it was something like Facebook or Twitter, but I've since seen a lot of interesting use cases pop up on Twitter. I think I heard of someone building a chess app on Nostr. I had a conversation with Arcade City about a week ago, and they are building a decentralized ride-sharing app. They're using Nostr as a messaging protocol. So it seems like Nostr is spreading far beyond the traditional definition of social media. What portion of the communication on the internet can Nostr eat into or disrupt?
Well, I don't know, but yeah, I think it can eat a lot, and most things that require an identity, I think, and you can be the owner of that identity, and stuff that requires reputation. For example, the ride sharing stuff, I think it would benefit from a reputation, and mostly stuff that is public, like you just broadcast stuff, and you don't care if other people are reading or not. Although there are some Nostr sub protocols that encrypt stuff and try to hide stuff to do DMs, for example. But yeah, I think of it agnostic protocol, agnostic like transport layer that some use cases like these I cited, like, they can benefit from, and they can use Nostr.
What impact do you think everyday consumers might feel if they're using a Nostr powered app versus a like a Web 2 app with the central server? Are there going to be any noticeable differences on the user experience, or like, do you think consumers will be gravitating towards applications that use Nostr over other protocols?
Again, you keep asking me these questions. I don't know. I think Nostr is very fun. The one thing that people, I don't know. I think there are some people that are very mad against these decentralized protocol networks like the Twitter, Facebook, etc. They're very mad against these things, but they keep using because there's no other way, and everybody's there. So I think they can stop being mad at these things, and if they are mad about the relay they're using or the set of relays they're using, they can just migrate to other one. And the apps are not super good still, but yet, but yeah, we need more developers making more apps and improving the apps that exist and making them better. But I think the experience could be better, much better than Twitter, Facebook, etc. For example, when I click on my notifications on Twitter, like, it takes 10 seconds to load. That's very weird.
Right.
The fact it's open allows for people to make new. One thing I've heard, I've read about on the internet multiple times, was that Twitter was, in the beginning, I think it had a very open API that a lot of people wrote apps for that, and it had a growing ecosystem of interesting apps that use Twitter as as their backbone. And Nostr could be something like that. And then the traditional programmers from Hacker News and stuff like that, and they like this kind of stuff, and they could benefit from using Nostr. And Twitter, like the rest of the story, is that Twitter closed their APIs and made everything much harder, and everybody was angry. And I think Nostr could be seen as like a message board, an open message board you can use for anything. And I think many more apps could be invented, and also apps that people from the peer-to-peer world that have been trying to build for years, and they never managed to get it working. These apps working because peer-to-peer doesn't work very well. They can be built on Nostr very well.
Yeah. Now, I can definitely see the advantage of having an open protocol and attracting developers to build on it, and not being concerned that some company is going to shut them off. How do you bootstrap the network effect of, I guess, developers and users? Like, how do you get to the point where Nostr is recognized as like the platform for people to build this like open web on?
Again, I have no idea. Well, it's already much more bootstrapped than I expected. I didn't expect Nostr to be so popular at this point. Like, it was just a very humble idea. And, immediately, a lot of people started liking it. So I am very much more optimistic now, because of all the people that saw the idea when I mentioned it first, like, a very high percentage liked the idea, and I started building it and was excited by the idea. So when I think I expect this like, when, as the idea reaches more people will be excited and will start building on it. And I don't know, I'm very optimistic. I am generally not very optimistic about this thing, but this time I am.
Were there any discussion points or any specific things you said that got people excited? Like, when discussing this with other people, what made their eyes light up?
Oh, I didn't discuss very much. I just pasted links on Twitter and stuff. And JB55, he always says, I think he said this in this show too, like, about the README I wrote on the Nostr GitHub page. He said that was very, very good. I don't know. I think most people read that and somehow they like it. I'm not sure what I wrote there. I never read again after writing. So
Fair enough. Okay, I do want to tangentially kind of discuss the idea of a peer-to-peer internet. You're talking about how like that the idea of like computers connecting to other computers directly without any central servers probably won't work. Can you talk to me a little bit about why that approach is not the right approach, and why Nostr is allows people to connect to multiple different relay nodes, but not is not built on a direct peer-to-peer connection between different computers?
well, I'm not very familiar with the low level details, but my understanding is that there are too many computers, and if you don't have an address to them, you can't reach them. And in these peer-to-peer networks, you don't have, like in consumer devices, phones and home computers, you generally don't have a fixed address. And if you have, there are all sorts of firewalls and stuff in the middle that prevent people from the external world to contacting you, like your ISP or your router, and generally your lack of a static IP. All these things make it very hard for people to connect to you, and also it wouldn't work either way, because in a decentralized world, you generally don't want to connect directly to someone. If it was just connecting to someone, that would be easier, but generally you want to find data that someone has published, or data that multiple people have published. The idea of IPFS, you've heard that about that. IPFS is the holy grail of peer-to-peer stuff. That's everybody publishing everything to, and everything is reachable, etc. But it doesn't work because there's too many pieces of data, and you don't know where that data is. And then they come up with, like, that data is spread around multiple computers, but you don't know which computers, and you can't reach these computers. So they came up with the DHT stuff that you use to ask, oh, do you know where is this piece of data? And then you must do that a million times to get a file. And then the peer you're asking through, they may not know, so you have to find another peer and ask to another peer, etc. And yeah, there are all sorts of quirks, and in the end it becomes a huge bloat. And if you run an IPFS node on your computer, it will use your entire connection, like you use your entire CPU just talking to other nodes about where pieces of data that it doesn't know, like people ask nodes asking other nodes about pieces of data. But the Ethereum people and other peer-to-peer enthusiasts that like the IPFS, they only use the gateways. There are some public gateways that cache everything they see, and then you just talk to that gateway. Oh, you know this data? Oh, of course I know. Here's the data. And do you know this other data? Yes, I know. And then it all works. But it's not real peer-to-peer that's working. If you try to do the real peer-to-peer stuff, as I tried many times before, it doesn't work.
I'm curious to know what your views are on Hole Punch. Have you had a chance to look at that? That's the recent project that the Tether family of companies have been working on.
Yeah, I tried the Kit app, and I think I spoke to one of the developers, like, related to the ecosystem there, and he convinced me that a little bit of the DHT may work to find peers, but it definitely doesn't work to find data. But if you can use, like, instead of a DHT, you could use a central server, and it would be okay. Like, it's just to serve as the bridge, so you can establish a direct connection to another peer. And after you establish the direct connection, then it's very good. That it's very very fast and straightforward, and that's the best way, like, to transmit data, is to have a direct connection. So if you have a way to coordinate these things, to find the other peer, and then you establish a direct connection, and then you can send a lot of data to the other peer, and vice versa. So I think the stuff like that, the Kit app, it has like video calls. I think it
Yeah.
would be nice to integrate that inside the Nostr app, For example, you do a Twitter Spaces thing inside a Nostr social networking app, and then like only for those restricted people that join the Twitter Spaces, you use some magic to establish direct connection to them, and then you share video and audio. I think it could work in that way.
I see. So for use cases that demand a lot of data, like video calling, maybe that's a great use case for hole punch, but discovering this data and being able to find it anywhere, that is where Nostr excels. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, I want to get into some of the blog posts. You're a thought leader as well as developer, and you've written a number of blog posts on Lightning topics, and I want to get into a couple of them. I know these are from a couple of years ago, but I want to get your assessment of how things have transitioned since then. One of the first ones that I saw was a critique of the value for value idea. And I think you wrote this article a while ago on why why the idea of value for value and the idea of donations is misguided. Just going to quickly highlight my impression of the article. I think your arguments boil down to it's very hard to define value. Donations are a very inefficient business model, and I think the conclusion was that creators would be better off selling content. First, I want to get your assessment. Do I have that right? And have your views on value for value changed at all in the last year or so?
I think it's partly correct assessment. They didn't change, but they also weren't very well defined in the first place, and they still are not. It's just a ask the question. What's the next question?
I am trying to understand, I guess, what the future of this value for value movement looks like. Like as a creator, I'm experiencing this from a lot of different apps, and they use a lot of different strategies for monetizing content. It's not always pure value for value. Like I think the podcasting apps are pretty much in line with this vision of value for value. But then when you extend outwards from the podcasting apps, you have a lot of different approaches that teams are taking to help people monetize content. One of them is, for example, Mash. I have a section on my site where I can paywall a transcript, a one-time paywall so anyone can read a transcript for, I think it's about $2 right now, of any of these episodes. So, for example, a listener listening to this, instead of listening to the full episode, they could just go to my website, read a 10-minute transcript, and be done with it. And that's a way to monetize that. I'd love to just get your assessment on what direction you think creators should be focusing on in this value for value Lightning monetization ecosystem.
Nice. Well, I hadn't seen that. I think that's the direction I was hinting at, this thing of selling a small paywall, putting a small paywall on content, and there are other things like sending comments that show up on the podcast somehow. I think there's a boost something that they made.
Boostograms. Yeah, that's the idea.
I think these small things they have much more potential than just donations. But I don't know. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think the donation, the value for value thing it came from that podcast guy. I forgot his name. He invented this concept, and
yes,
which to me is just another name for a donation. But he will say it's not a donation; it's value for value. But I think that's not sound economic theory. But yeah, it works for him. Donation works for a bunch of people, but I think for most people it won't work. And I think these other things are more interesting, and they also more cool to do. I think they can bring more excitement to the users. And I'm not very familiar with the Twitch people, people that stream games and other stuff on Twitch, but I've heard about a lot of different things they do. They sell the you pay something and then you write something on the screen, or there's a voice reading what you said, what you wrote, or stuff like that. That's captured a little by the Zebedee streamer product. Right? I hope it would be
Yeah.
hope it would be eating more and more of that market as the time passes, and including more features too. But there are other things, like there's a lottery thing that you do on Twitch chat and you pay something, but they do this with points, like Twitch points, which is very bad because these Twitch points just become a very bad form of money that these people do. Like it's very
Yeah,
they
exactly.
earn all these points and they can do nothing with these points except like waste their times if they were earning satoshis, and then they would pay satoshis to the creator, etc., without Twitch taking 30% of all the money. Would be much better. There is like they sell these people. They sell, like, it's not selling because no one wants to say, oh, I'm selling rights to my my person, but they say, oh, you're a supporter, so you earn something, you earn the right to say something, or you earn the right to play a game against me in live, in the live stream, stuff like that. On podcasts, the comment stuff, I think I like the idea of podcasts, the listeners suggesting topics and suggesting questions by sending payments and stuff like that. It's very good. It filters out spam, filters out that stuff. But also you shouldn't commit, like the podcast host shouldn't commit to asking all the questions that come with money. They must exercise some discretion. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
I see there are many possibilities, and probably a lot more that I haven't thought about, and these are much more interesting than just donations. And donations are good too. Like many people will do donations, and that's fine. But I think there's an excessive focus on donations as the only way to do stuff, and then they come with the value for value theory, and they need a value for value book to throw on people that say donations are not very good, etc.
Okay, interesting. So I guess, you're maybe not so bullish on the idea of donations as the only kind of monetization strategy that someone uses, but in tandem with things like comments and with other strategies, you think maybe, it's it's not a bad idea to have a donation option. It's just, I think, if I understand you correctly, your point is just that it's not the monetization method that's going to fix all of a creator's problems.
Yeah, I also don't know if what I'm saying. Yeah, maybe that's a good summary, maybe not.
I love it. I also one other question on, I'm starting to see a standardized approach to some of these, whatever we want to call them, donations or boosts or tips or whatever, across the Lightning ecosystem. I've started to see boost buttons pop up, and like a number of teams, I believe, are working on them. I believe it's pretty easy to send a boost through like Albi. Mash has a boost button. Stacker News has the lightning bolt. Of course, you just click it and it boosts automatically. I wonder if there's a standardized button that like tips or boosts a set amount that everyone knows, and it's kind of like a ecosystem standard. Like if we agree, 10 cents is what a boost is going to be. Do you think that eliminates some of the problems associated with people trying to define the value they get out of something, and they can quickly go, hey, here's 10 cents, here's 10 cents, here's 10 cents. Or like, I'm just kind of brainstorming here, but I think that might be, one way to eliminate some of the mental overhead associated with making payments on Lightning. Because I think one of the points you made in that article for value was a good one, that like people do have a hard time determining what value they get out of something. And it would be helpful if we had an easier tool for people to like default to. I wonder what kind of impact you think that might have on the monetization for Lightning
I
creators.
think it could help. Yeah, I think it could help, but I don't think it would solve, because people would do multiple boosts So, oh, I boosted 5 times, and, and then I boosted only 1 time. But I think it would help. Yeah, on Stacker News, for example, if you click once, you pay 1 cent. So that's very low for most of the cases. But also in most of the cases, people don't deserve any cents for shit posting.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, I don't know. I have a very hard time figuring out. The experience I have, like when in the beginnings of LNTXBot, was like people were starting to tip everybody in Telegram chats, and I started doing it too because I had never done. Then I stopped doing it because it was so weird. I would tip someone, and then someone would tip me. I know that the same person I had just tipped, they would tip me back. So the tip meant nothing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. I think we're going to find out a lot about how humans deal with money in the next like decade as people start to have much more. They can use their money much quicker, and they can like spend it and receive it in many different ways. I think we'll learn a lot about people's habits for how they like to spend money and what gets people to give someone else money. And I think we're going to learn a lot anyways. I want to finish this off with a segment I do at the end of every show called the lightning round. A few rapid fire questions. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes.
Welcome to the lightning round presented by Zebedee, your portal into the world of Bitcoin gaming. The Zebedee app offers a full-featured lightning wallet seamlessly integrated with your own personal gamer tag so that you can earn Bitcoin on all of Zebedee's games on mobile and desktop. It's never been more fun to earn Bitcoin, and Zebedee is your key to it all. To claim your personal gamer tag and start earning some Bitcoin of your own, download the Zebedee app today.
Okay, so I know you're full of all sorts of ideas rattling around in your head about Bitcoin and Lightning, and you've been working on a lot of different projects. What is one idea you wish someone would build in Bitcoin which has not been built yet?
Oh, Jesus Christ, I have no idea. I want to see Hive Mind, the prediction market. Let me say again, prediction market stuff that Paul Storch invented. I think that is a huge idea with lots of potential for making the world better in multiple ways, and no one cares about it.
Yeah. So Hive Mind and like prediction markets built on Lightning, is that the idea?
Yeah, Hive Mind is a decentralized thing. It has its own blockchain and hopes to use Drive Chain to move Bitcoin to that. But I think it has to be a decentralized thing, like a censorship-resistant thing. Can't be a service because the government will shut down the service very easily. Governments don't like prediction markets, so. But yeah, we must find a solution for this and build it.
I think another one of those in the same line of thinking, like I haven't seen any sports betting apps built on Lightning, and I imagine that would be a pretty strong use case. There's just, obviously like people's tendency to gamble and want to bet is obviously, it's pretty much universal, and there's seems to be demand for betting products in all sorts of areas of crypto. I'm curious to know I wonder if, why I haven't seen a betting app launch on Lightning. Like to me, doesn't seem to be many of them today.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I built one, but it wasn't properly sports. It was betting on events, but it was very bad. But there was a one called Microbet before, but it was also very bad because the amounts, we couldn't choose the ratio you would bet. Yeah, but we need someone to make one that is centralized, so the government will shut it down very easily, and then we make one that is decentralized.
That's the progression of events, I guess.
Yeah.
If you could change one thing about Bitcoin, what would it be?
Oh, these questions. I don't know. Maybe, yeah, I should have some way of preventing people from spamming the chain, or compensating the people that run nodes for storing other people's data for free forever. But I don't know. I don't think there is a solution for that. Yeah, but actual change that it would be possible, I don't know. I think there's no change needed.
Mm. Are there any books that have changed your view of the world?
Jesus Christ. Yeah,
But
I don't think there was any books. Yeah.
okay. And final question: if you could only hold one asset for the next 10 years and it could not be Bitcoin, what would it be?
Um, Jesus Christ, these questions are too hard. Maybe gold. Yeah.
Maybe gold. Okay,
Yeah.
I like it. Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time. I really enjoyed this discussion. Even some of the really hard questions, of course, I enjoy asking them, and you had some great answers. Where can people go to learn more about you and the work that you do?
Well, Fiatjaf.com, Fiatjaf. I mean, I'm named at Fiatjaf everywhere, so that's it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Thank you.
In the last 7 days, you guys have sent in 12,296 sats, and that came in from 80 different supporters. Thank you to everyone who has been sending in sats and comments. It means a lot. I've also just learned that the number of sats that are displayed on my dashboard does not include the LNPay or Lightning address payments that people have been sending into my Lightning address. That's kerook@fountain.fm. So add on those. I don't have a full total for those, but the number is larger than the number that I announce every week. We're up to 12,307. Sats just keep streaming in. Let's run through the top 5 supporters of the week. First one is Julie City. Julie was on the show in episode 42, I believe, talking about OpenNode, sent in 2,450 sats. An anonymous user at Castomatic sent in 1,511 sats. StemR42 sent in 1,218 sats. Mary Oscar sent in 1,000 sats. And Turla sent in 534 sats. We got a few comments this week as well. First is from Sir Brian of London on episode 64 with Joe Consorti on the time value of the Lightning Network. Brian says, there is one systemic risk I didn't hear mentioned, the possibility that core software of the Lightning Network contains a catastrophic flaw, allowing a large draining attack. Brian, I've got to say, I'm not sure about the technical side of this and the security risks of the Lightning Network. This particular discussion with Joe wasn't really geared towards the assessing the security risks of Lightning, but that's a good idea for another episode. So thank you for sending in that comment. I personally don't have the insight to share much on that topic, but I will start looking for some guests who can come on and talk about, what are those security risks and what are the, what do we as Lightning developers and builders and the Lightning community, what do we have to worry about? What do we have to think about when designing this protocol? So thank you for the question and the sats. Black Lotus 99 says, great information. I look forward to learning more about Arcade City. I stumbled across their project a few years back, and this is in response to episode 63 with Christopher David. Jing Zhao says, sent in a comment in another language. Unfortunately, I cannot read that. I don't even know what language it is to translate it. They sent in 2 sats as well, so thank you for the sats. TACE sent a fire emoji and 25 sats. Milsen sent in 3 fire emojis and 98 sats. Black Lotus 99 says, thanks for this very informative conversation on episode 56 with Gigi. And Julie says, hey guys, fantastic pod. This is in response to episode 45 with Daniel Buckner. Julie says, had flashbacks to working on ISO 20022 payment specs circa 2010. They might be implemented by 2045. I've recently left OpenNode and TBD has captured my imagination. Not the easy path, but the right path. Cheers, Julie. Thank you, Julie, for sending in the comment and the sats. All the best with your next work after OpenNode, and hope we can do another podcast episode together soon. That's all for the comments of the week. Thank you again to everyone sending in sats and comments. It means a lot, and it's really cool to see this value for value movement ticking up on my show. We got 80 different supporters in the last week. Very cool to see. So thank you again for everyone tuning in. Looking forward to seeing what you guys send in next week. I should have another episode out in a couple days. See you soon.